when President Trump was president, we Democrats supported lifting the debt ceiling because it's the responsible thing to do.
The only question is who should address it.
Your gimmick and what's necessary is for Congress to show that the world can count on America paying its debt.
Our government can't sell bonds to raise the money for its expenses, including interest on the national debt, payments for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. As we all know, Washington is spending far more than it is taking in from revenue. Back in 2019, the limit on the national debt was suspended for 2 years. That suspension expired on July 31st this year, and Congress hasn't renewed the suspension.
The U.S. national debt is more than $28 trillion. It's a massive number. In fact, it's the biggest in the world. But the U.S. government keeps spending more than it brings in.
We're essentially throwing a gigantic Molotov cocktail into our own house. And it's the only house that we live in.
With the COVID pandemic, government spending has exploded, even as demands for more government programs are growing. But who will end up paying for all this? Are our future American generations really getting a broke country? Over the past 20 years, the U.S. has borrowed more and more money as comparison to the share of GDP. It's around 100%, the highest since World War II.
This is a totally democratic government. They have an obligation to raise the debt ceiling, and they will do it.
Are you worried about the debt ceiling, Mr. President?
Nope. They're not going to let us $8 trillion of that is Republican watch.
The biggest recent hike happened in 2020 when the coronavirus pandemic hit the US and crippled the nation's economy. The question of whether it's economically feasible to keep adding to this mountain of debt has long vexed Congress, which is in charge of the debt ceiling. The law decides how much the US is allowed to borrow. But before that, hello and welcome to MoneyIQ. Join our channel by hitting subscribe and clicking the bell icon to be updated on our new uploads. If debt ceiling headlines give you a strong sense of deja vu, you're not crazy.
Congress finally cleared a $900 billion coronavirus relief package just before midnight last night, and with it, a $1.4 trillion bill that funds the government through the fiscal year.
Every few years since 2011, the US government has come to the brink of defaulting on its obligations, which many experts argue could have dire consequences for the US economy and financial markets. While the United States has yet to actually default, the brinkmanship can still cause market turmoil. To help make sense of the situation, let's look at the timelines and circumstances surrounding these two major functions of government: spending and borrowing. Some parts of this are simple, others are highly complex. So what is debt ceiling? The debt ceiling is not a limit on spending. It is a limit on the ability of the Department of the Treasury to borrow money to pay outstanding debt. So, by April 15, the House and Senate are expected to adopt their own budget resolution, which sets the overall spending plan for the upcoming fiscal year. In fact, Congress frequently misses the April 15 target and sometimes fails to pass a budget resolution at all. In the absence of a budget resolution, Congress typically enacts deeming resolutions, which provide spending allocations to the various appropriations committees. If a deeming resolution isn't agreed to, the most recent agreed to spending allocations remain in effect.
11. Each of the 7 times that the debt limit was addressed, Congress did so on a bipartisan basis.
Recall that by October 1, Congress should have passed a budget resolution. It did not. And here we are. It's highly unlikely lawmakers will advance an all-encompassing budget by Friday. The most likely outcome will be another kick the can down the road. Continuing resolution providing funding for anywhere from a few days to several months, according to reporting by CQ Roll Call. When the national debt gets close to the debt ceiling, Treasury is empowered to enact what are known as extraordinary measures to shift funds around in order to meet financial obligations. This leaves the 2 other options as temporary measures until a more suitable long-term solution can be found. Given current congressional rancor, a bipartisan solution will be difficult to achieve. This is especially true when both budgetary debates and debt ceiling disagreements become weaponized in attempts to win concessions. What happens if Congress stops raising or suspending the debt limit? Once the debt limit is reached, the Treasury Department can no longer borrow money to pay outstanding debt. Ultimately, this could result in the United States of America defaulting on its debt, which most experts suggest would be a fiscal crisis. Could the United States simply do away with the debt ceiling? While it might be theoretically possible, those who have studied the matter suggest there are constitutional, legal, and procedural barriers that may prevent this type of action. So what are the key takeaways from this video? The debt ceiling is a limit on the amount of money the government can borrow to pay off existing debt. The debt ceiling deadline is the date when that limit is reached. Funding or appropriations reflect legislation passed to keep the government running. Continuing resolutions keep the government funded on a temporary basis. In October 2021, Congress passed a continuing resolution to keep the government running until December 3, 2021, and lifted the debt ceiling by $480 billion, which was expected to be reached by the same date. Failure to address funding can result in a government shutdown. Failure to address the debt limit can result in the US defaulting on its debt. A cheeky like and subscription will be very much appreciated if you did enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time right here on the Money IQ. Bye-bye.